one of the things that I wanted to talk about here is that there are really many different kinds of stress and different sources of stress. And the kind of stress that we're under now, all of us, I would assume, is maybe a little more generic than personality related. And we may have responses that are a little bit different. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll have a few things to look at. So topic here, what are your superpowers? Whoops. So I ask you to answer these questions. So we did that, looked at that, not knowing what's likely to happen, all of these things. These are actually all related to personality differences. We'll get to that later. When Stephanie and I were talking about this, we came up with the hierarchy of needs. Now I've heard it's not Maslow's, but everybody knows it by Maslow, so we're going to go with that. So what we have are this hierarchy of needs, and what we've got going on here is what's at risk here are our basic needs. These are our life-saving needs, especially physiological and safety. So, I'm staying home because of some health issues, because I'm most at risk. I'm staying home more, and I'm committed to it, and it's very stressful, but that's maybe another problem. So there are physiological and safety needs, and what happens when you do that, as we've seen on the news with the people in nursing homes, with people standing outside trying to make some contact with their loved ones inside, is that love and belongingness is still pretty important to us in this time of crisis. So there are lots of things that have to do with our stress. And these kinds of stressors that come up when these needs aren't going to get met may or may not have to do with personality differences. Where the personality lenses that we use really come into play are in the self-esteem, what it takes for us to feel good about ourselves, and in self-actualization, being all that we can be. And so most of our work, usually, and the people that take our certification programs, their work is really about meeting these needs for the most part. When we get into relationships, we do some things around love and belongingness, but these are the needs that the models, the various lenses we use are most helpful. And if we can tap into some of those superpowers that we have from those lenses, we may be able to help ourselves manage the other stress. There are a ton of other stress management things that you can do in times of crisis, breathing exercises, but that's not what we're going to talk about today, because we want to get you in touch with some other stuff. Okay. So you can feel free to type in chat. Stephanie will just interrupt me if something happens that needs my attention, and I'll try to. My screen's over here. I'll just move it over here. Okay, so I'll be able to see my chat a little bit. Okay, so let's see where else we need to go then. So what do you do when you're stressed? Right, so we're going to take a look at some things that you do, and what I want you to do when I go to this one, whoops, sorry, I went the wrong direction. I want you to remember the numbers of the ones that you relate to. So you may, I don't know if you can read these, they're a little fine, so I'll read them for you. Number one is remove myself. So under stress, I remove myself from the stress-producing situation or interactions. Number two, I seek interaction. I seek out lots of interactions or activities that are happy-making. Number three, I persistently assert my solutions or my feelings. Number four, go along. I go along with the situation to see what's needed, that's sort of waiting a bit. Number five is disengage. So mentally disengage from the interactions so I can get control of my emotions or figure things out. Number six, positive focus. So focusing on the positive. Number seven, take charge. Take charge of the situation in any way I can. And number eight, nothing. So basically it's inaction. So get so overwhelmed I do nothing. So if you just pick the ones that you think fit you the most, and we'll see how that relates to interaction styles, which is what we're going to do today. Okay, so, now, hang on. All right, so, whoops. All right, so if we just substitute the interaction style, now I'm making an assumption that if you've got this, the email from us and the notification, that you know a little bit about interaction styles. There are four, for those of you who don't, there are 4 interaction style patterns. And we call them by these names: chart the course, get things going, in charge, and behind the scenes. Okay, so those are the names we made up because it's sort of very descriptive. And so the stress response typically from chart the course is remove yourself from the stress producing situation. And if we go on down there, and I messed up my colors. Oh no, I didn't mess up the colors, never mind. When we go down to chart the course a little lower, we have mentally disengaged from interaction so I can get control of my emotions or figure things out. Okay, so those are some things that we do. So if you have a chart this course style, that's likely to be something that you would naturally do. So thinking about the ones that you chose, those would be the ones. Okay, I forgot to put the numbers on this part, forgive me. I think it's a little bit later. Okay, so get things going. The tendency under stress is to seek out lots of interactions, look for things to be, activities that are fun, that are going to lift the mood. And then on down there, you see focusing on the positive. So that's also one that get things going tends to do. In charge has a tendency to persistently assert the solutions or the feelings about in a situation, and also to take charge of a situation if it feels out of control. And of course, if you're under a lot of stress and you have an in-charge pattern, likely it's all going to feel out of control. Fair amount. Okay. And then behind the scenes, go along with the situation to see what's needed and get so overwhelmed I do nothing. So it's kind of a just in action while gathering all that information. So all of these are healthy things to do. They can help you. So here are the numbers. Now, I don't know why I did that this way. Okay, sorry, I just had a duplicated slide. I just got slap happy with this thing. So, all right, so those were the numbers. And so what do you do when you're stressed? Oh, I went the wrong, oh, okay, that was my finger was on the wrong one. Okay, so what stresses you the most? And we had the ones where a lot of us shared these stressors, but this is pretty much what each of the patterns get stressed about. So for chart the course, not being able to anticipate what's likely to happen, because their drive, so the chart the course pattern, in the booklet we use an arrow to describe it. There's a drive pushing us towards some kind of outcome. And for chart the course, this drive is this pressing need to anticipate. And so that's what's likely to be trigger, when this is happening, what's likely to trigger you into a stress response. For get things going, the drive is they have this urgent need to involve and be involved. And so they get stressed when there's not enough interaction and not being a part of what's going on. So the sequester, the rest, whatever it is, doing stuff at home, I hate to call it quarantine, but being, limited and not being able to get more than 6 feet, less than 6 feet away from people, if you're following that, that could be extremely stressful for that style, just that part of it. In charge, the drive is this urgent need to accomplish. So obviously the stressor is, so nothing's being accomplished. They feel out of control. And behind the scene, and so that's the nature of this situation. So when, and I may be ahead of myself, but when this situation is, none of us have much control, except for maybe our own actions. And then there is a feeling like nothing's really accomplished, and we can't accomplish what we need to accomplish if we can't go out, for me, and get groceries myself. Okay. And so this drive gets thwarted, we get this stress response, but we might all have this stress response since that's so much of the situation. So while it might go with the in-charge pattern, don't be surprised if you find yourself having that kind of a stress response. Behind the scenes, the reason that behind the scenes often responds by not doing much is that they don't have enough input yet. So that's what their drive is, to this pressing need to integrate to get the best result possible. And so there's not enough input, and they feel pressed to decide too quickly. And so let's wait and see, or spend a lot of time watching the news, gathering input, reading things, which may or may not be helpful, might be even more stress reducing. Okay, so let's see what else we created last night. So this is sort of the summary of what I talked about. So chart the course. By the way, these colors just happen to go with the theme that came up in PowerPoint. They're nothing brand new on this to use the colors. So chart the course. It's worth the effort to think ahead and reach the goal. That's the core belief of chart the course. The energy is focused. The decisions tend to be deliberate. Obviously, you've gathered this information you've anticipated, and then they're driven to get this desired result. Okay, so think of that as the pattern. Behind the scenes, the core belief is it's worth the time to integrate and reconcile many inputs. So the energy tends to be fairly open, wanting to make consultative decisions, consulting lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of sources, and then to get the best result possible. This scenario is stressful here because it's almost impossible to get the best result possible. And for chart the course, it may not be possible to even get the desired result. Okay. So in charge, well, it's worth the risk to go ahead and act and decide. So those of you who have an in-charge pattern may feel an extra amount of tension because it feels like there's no inaction. Like we're not taking action, and certainly you can't do it. And so the energy is pretty determined about that. Tending to make quick decisions, trusting that, well, we can fix the decisions if they're too quick, and getting an achievable result. So at least it's something we can accomplish that will then show that we're making progress. Get things going. It's worth the energy to involve everyone and get them to want to, and they have this engaging energy, like to make consensual decisions. I now call that, by the way, I didn't change it on this, collaborative decisions, because consensus means everybody agrees. And that's not the technical definition of it, but that's what people think about. So it isn't that everybody agrees, but you have this interaction to come to the decision, so you can express your concerns and whatnot. And so we can't really get to do that except maybe online, because we aren't in groups. And then there's the embraced results. So wanting people to all, to agree that this is the right thing. Okay. So now, so here are the triggers, right? Not knowing what's likely to happen, not seeing progress for chart the course, not being part of what's going on, feeling unliked or not accepted. I mean, if you're not able to interact and get feedback, you're not going to get that sense of, I'm part of, I'm in relationship with you. And by the way, that isn't just extroversion, in case you're not new in case you're new to interaction styles. In charge, nothing is being accomplished, feeling out of control, that's going to trigger the stress response. And behind the scenes, not enough input. And sometimes it's about not enough credit. But of course, we're not interacting in person much, so credit may not matter. But pressed to decide too quickly. So when you're wanting to get enough information before you decide exactly what you're going to do about this situation. Now, there are many other things. These are 4 patterns, and this is how it shows up. What's interesting is there are stress reaction styles to this. So for chart the course, the drive to anticipate If you can't do that and you get in a situation that feels chaotic, they tend to distance themselves. They tend to move away from, to shut down even in its extreme. And then too much stress, they may flip over and get into micromanaging or insisting on being involved or looking very frenetic with their energy when it's usually kind of calm. Okay, so for get things going, the drive is to involve and be involved, right? So when they're working with diverse things, they want to conciliate to get to some kind of involvement and agreement. And so their style under stress is a conciliatory one with the other people that they're being stressed by or ever. And they can just get a little too overexpressive, which could mean micromanaging, but mostly about just too effusive is what they can happen to be. Having to talk a lot or something like that. And then when they it escalates, they may just do the opposite and use selective avoidance. There'll be certain things that they will avoid doing. So that's get things going. In charge, the drive is to accomplish, gets some achievable result. And so they may get a pretty asserting is what they tend to do, assert their thoughts and feelings and whatever. And when they get really, really stressed, they can get bossy and demanding. And then what happens is under severe stress, they can't really make any headway. They just go say, whatever, and so resentfully check out. My hunch is with so many of the stressors having to do with loss, that we have no control over this thing, many of us will be having this kind of a response. So hopefully you'll get a few hints about what to do about that. Okay, so behind the scenes, the drive to integrate, and so until you can get it integrated, the response is adjusting. You're going to adjust to what keeps coming along. Become quiet and agreeable is what they tend to do under stress. So you may not even know it, and they may think they've agreed, but they haven't. They seem agreeable. And then they flip over, and then that quiet and agreeable goes away, and you take a rigid stance about what you want to do. And so that's a bit about what behind the scenes is likely to do. Now, in our little poll in the beginning, the behind the scenes items, the two that went with that, got the least votes. So I don't know what that means. I can tell you, but I'm doing a fair amount of all that other stuff as well. That behind the scenes is my style. Okay, so let's see where we go. So this is a more complex graphic with tons of information on it. So responses to stressful events. There are two things you can do. You can act on it, and you can work with it. And you can disengage in order to act on it or work with it, or you can engage with others, act on it, and work with it. So here's what happens. If you have, and I didn't put the styles on here, so this is chart the course. For those of you used to the matrix, this is always up in there. So, okay, upper left. Chart the course. What they tend to do under this kind of stress is flee. They're wired to flee. Interaction styles is related to the way the body's wired, not so much the brain. That doesn't mean the brain's not involved, but it's mostly that. So they flee until they can get a handle on it, and then they come back and face. These are my F words, just in case you need some. So the core impulse then is to move away from isn't liked, to stay away from something. And then when they're stressed, they get tense and somewhat guarded. And when they get super stressed, as we mentioned before, they flip to insistent involvement in micromanaging. And what happens with all of this, what they're relieved by, time and space away to think through and plan. So if this is your style, take the time. Give yourself permission to do that. And if your partner has this style and you don't, and you want them to talk it out, give them some space. Okay? Partner, friends, whoever you get to interact with. Okay? Now, let's see. So this one over here is behind the scenes. What they tend to do is freeze. And by the way, fight, flight, freeze, and the other one that I'll show you, those are all research-based responses that people make. We see them happening in the interaction styles. So just to know that those are actual responses. So the thing is, do nothing, freeze, right? And once you get enough, then you can flow. And of course, I don't doubt if you're seeing my gestures, but they're really good. So the core impulse is go with what's happening. Just kind of go along with it, but do nothing really until you get a handle on it. And when they're stressed, they seem relaxed, but inside they're churning. Not emotions, brain, everything. When they're super stressed, then they will flip and take this rigid, even aggressive stance. And what helps them is you can help them by finding a way to support, or there's an opportunity to be effective. So that's something you can help them do, or if this is your style, you can find some ways to do that. So offering this kind of information is, for me, with this, my behind the scenes style, is stress relieving. And it was so much, I mean, I didn't feel stressed the whole time I'm working on it, because it's a way that I can support. Okay. And other things are when other people support me, like when Stephanie offered to get the groceries, right? So those kinds of things. All right. Now, those are the disengaging things, because the first impulse is to disengage. And one is working with it and the other's acting on it. It's just a difference. Okay, so now if we go down to the next one, fight, then facilitate. So fight is to push against something, right? So flight, you move away from it. Freeze, you go with it and do nothing really. And flight, you push against it and you want to fix the problem. So this is in charge, natural inclination when the problem is there. And when they're stressed, they can become really forceful and determined. So they turn the volume up on the natural style. And then when they're super stressed, they flip and resentfully check out. We saw that one in the earlier one. Too many pretty slides to add information to. So flip to resentfully check out, resentfully checking out. And it may just look like, well, whatever, dismissive of whatever it is. And they can be relieved. They get relief by confronting the stressor. So it helps if you're willing to engage with somebody of that style, as they figure out how to push against this thing that's so stressful. And if this is your style, then you need to also learn to do that. And so part of that, for example, for my style, since I experience a lot of this out of control stress as well, it helps if I act on it. You know, I at least do something about the stress, maybe just a little thing. So it can help you when you're in that mode, whether it's the natural way you go. But the whole thing here is engaging with it in some way. In my case, it's mostly bitching and moaning to my friends and family, or sending emails or something like that. Okay, so now the last one is get things going, and what they tend to do under stress is a flurry, lots of interaction. And then they come back and focus. The then, by the way, is usually, you know, if they can get enough handle on it and have a more healthy response. So, okay, so this is get things going. So that impulse is to move towards something new, do something positive, get lots of interaction going. And then when they're stressed, they get excited, maybe a little too happy, if you can believe that people can be too happy. Talkative, frenzied. And then when super stressed, they flip to selective avoidance. So there'll be something that they will avoid by doing something else. Or just, you know, it's kind of Okay, so they're relieved by distraction from the stressor. So all of these things are distractors, so you don't have to think about it, because the stressors in this case especially are keeping you from interacting and having that sense of involvement. So if we go diagonally, the flurry needs to be distracted, right? And flight needs to be leave the field in a way. Maybe physically, maybe mentally. Freeze wants to find a way to do something and support it, and fight wants to confront it. So there is some action and things that happen crossways. So hopefully that gives you some sense of some things you can do. But there's more, but wait, there's more. Okay, so let's look at what are the superpowers that go with this lens. Oh, let me go back here. Distraction from the stressors. So I had a friend who has this style, and what she was doing was playing solitaire on the computer. She's basically extroverted, but she was playing solitaire when she was extremely stressed. So doing other things, but it has to be doing, usually they're involving others. Lots of Facebook work, time on Facebook, stuff like that. Okay. All right, so let me move on. Yeah, expressive. That would be one good way to put that. So what are those superpowers? And from interaction styles, the superpowers, the kinds of things you do easily and effortlessly, are a contribution that you can make to your own well-being as well as to others. So it helps to remember those. So chart the course. These are the talents. All of these things help anticipate and keep people on course. So outlining and planning agendas. Now, chart the course is not all about planning. This is just one variety of it. It's not about detailed plans that everybody has to follow necessarily. Monitoring progress, so keeping some records, noticing how things are going, your own progress or the event. Conceptualizing an end result and giving guidance. And let me give you a little clue. Many of you know there's 16 personality types, okay? So these are grouped by the essential motivator patterns that they fall into. So outline, plan agendas, monitor progress, the stabilizer, and so on. I'll just tell you this if you want to remember it. If it doesn't make sense, you don't know anything about it, just let it go. The first two in the list are stabilizer. The second two in the list are theorist. The third two are improviser. And the last two are catalyst. Those are all versions of chart the course. And I have found that people within each pattern do all of them from time to time. So it's not just those things, but anyway, okay. Hope that's helpful. So give guidance, conceptualize this end result, give guidance about how to get there, devise a plan, figure out what needs to be done, foresee how people respond, and illuminate. Illuminate, shedding light on things. So if your talent is chart the course, you may feel like you really can't do any of this stuff. Everybody else is doing the planning. You don't have a role that will take care of that. So find a place in a way that you can at least begin to plan some things, get a little more planful. And actually that may help all of us, but that's something. And you may find some of your friends, acquaintances, family members are very stressed. And if you have a chart the course style, you may be better able to move into yourself and your natural talents by taking a deep breath or whatever you need to do to recenter and tap into these talents to help them cope, because they may need some of this as well. Okay. Get things going. Well, like the little balls, you get that movement going and a lot of good things happen. So making things easy or facilitating whatever, facilitating a discussion group online could happen from this style. Discovering new ways of seeing things, brainstorming, that's what creative ways can we do something. Exploring options, well, let's try this and see if it works. Persuading people, kind of getting in the, oh, well, we could do this, and then being able to get them to see that we could do it. Sharing insights that you have, and catalyzing and energizing. So getting in all of that. So facilitating, getting people together, and finding a creative way to get people together, because I think one of the greatest needs we all have is that relationship needs and having some sense of community. So maybe some of us in bits and pieces, some of it like lots, but you may be able to help with that. Okay. In charge. Talents, supervise. Maybe there is something that that you can find to supervise, provide the resources or mobilize the resources. One is just a slight difference. One is you're going to give somebody the resources. The other one is you're going to mobilize them and find them on a broader scale. Articulating a vision, so helping people see where you're going, executing on some actions, doing some things like that, leading others to a goal, mentoring, accomplishing through people. So for in charge, that stressor around what do I do? How do I actually take action that's going to make a difference? My thought here is that you may have to find a place that's needed. It may not be in the usual places that you would be able to do that. So now you're a manager and you have to work at home. And how do you do that? And so reaching out would in online again, setting up frequent emails, lots of remote kinds of things that can be done. Which reminds me, we have a booklet. And that's talk about working remotely. That would be very helpful if you want to get that at innerstrength.org. Yes, so now we've had, behind the scenes. So we have behind the scenes. I put that last, there we go. That had to do with the way this other chart fell out, because it was a suggestion from PowerPoint. Okay, so supporting others, defining specifications, things that you can do, producing high quality results, clarifying values. Well, I didn't sort these out, never mind. Search for commonalities, reconciling consistencies, sustaining efforts, and encouraging participation. So these are not sorted by essential motivators, by the way. It was the first one I did.